Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Amen. Today we're going to discuss an awesome subject. Most people haven't caught on, especially Muslims haven't caught on. If someone asked me, how could you define the problems of the modern world in one word? I would say the best word is
woke.
Woke. This is a deep-seated problem that's all around us, in all communities, everywhere. Okay, so we're getting into some pretty heavy-duty material. We may, in fact, need to do a couple of sessions on this, but we'll see how it moves along. Okay. So one of the people I like to watch, the only person I watch on CNN, honestly, is Fareed Zakaria. I think he's an honest journalist, although he's somewhat of a left-winger, but mostly he's a very honest journalist. And he starts his show saying, today we're going to talk about Ukraine, or we're going to talk about what's going on college campuses. And he said, but first, I'm going to give you my take. So following in his footsteps, in his multimedia footsteps, they're professionals at CNN. We can criticize a lot of other things, but in terms of producing videos, they're professionals. We're going to follow in his footsteps, and I'm going to give you my take on woke, first of all. Now, woke is very vast, you'll see. It's everywhere, and you have to understand it, or you'll be victimized by it, I guarantee you. I told someone about this video that I was going to be doing, and she said, okay. And they said, you see, you're already in woke mode. Okay. This video, inshallah, we'll see, it's not okay. It's great. It's awesome. It's ajib that we're doing this video. It's not just okay, because part of woke is to be morally neutral in everything. Have no particular opinions except if they're the same opinions as everyone else around you. So even in this brief exchange, we're already into woke. Okay is not an answer, by the way, except for very special. It's not a general answer. How are you doing? Good. No, it's not an answer. Give me some evidence. How are you? I'm good, say the millennials. I answer back, what's your evidence? Good is not a state of being. Good is a state of morality. What's your evidence? They laugh. They never heard this before. So what is woke? Okay. Here I'm going to shock the IT people with an IT analogy. Woke is a computer worm. Okay, we haven't heard that much about worms lately. We hear a lot about viruses. We hear a lot about that other thing that they do a lot to big corporations nowadays.
Data breach?
No. Like they take the website hostage. No?
Could be a lot of things.
No, it's something that a lot of the scammers and the hackers do nowadays, taking whole companies hostage. Anyway, we're a little rusty on words these days. It'll come back to me, I'll tell you, though not relevant. So, woke is a worm. It's more than a virus. Okay, so if we're looking for ideological viruses, there's radical feminism, there's communism, there's atheism, there's genderism, there's all kinds of viruses now in our moral world, but woke is more than that. It goes into all dimensions. Just like the worms, when people were hacking you, the worm would destroy all your software. Well, woke will destroy all your moral software and leave you in Never Never Land. Okay? It's arguably the most dangerous form of corruption, more than any of the other ones I just mentioned. Like, I know a lot of the people, like the right-wing people, like on Epoch Times, they like to blame everything on communism and Marxism. Marxism is an ideological virus, but woke is more expansive, covers more territory. Marxism is just one of the forms of woke. Okay. Why is it so bad? Because at its heart, okay, yeah, checking with my notes. I don't know if that's woke or not. Not allowed to use teleprompters these days. Ransomware, that was the word. Okay. You heard of that one?
Yes.
Okay. Ransomware. Woke is like ransomware. It takes over your whole moral system. Why is it dangerous? Because it refuses basic traditional values of good and evil. No good and evil. It's just what you like and what you don't like. No truth and falsehood. That's also banished in woke. It's what you believe. If you believe it, it's good, and I won't go against it. If you don't believe it, if you're against it, it's bad, and I'll go along with you. That's the woke approach. And belief and disbelief, completely unimportant in woke. In fact, most of the real woke people are agnostics. So beware. It presents itself as a form of kindness or goodness. See, this is why. So beware. In the guise of humanism and empathy, this is a quote from a recent documentary called Woke Revealed. If you can find it, I think they've taken it off maybe now, but if you can find it, it's excellent. It got me interested in the subject because finally they were looking at woke from the inside. You know, all the critiques of woke are from the outside. There are critiques of Marxism and critiques of critical race theory and critiques of Black Lives Matter and critiques of all these different things, but outward manifestations of woke. But there's an inward, if you want, I like to call it an unconscious element. People want to be nice. They want to be good. Sorry for the sarcasm. They want to be kind, and so they won't tell you when you're doing the wrong thing. This is the opposite of all the religious traditions. Judaism, Christianity. In Islam we have Amr bil Maruf wa Nahi al Munkar. We, sometimes they translate, we command, we enjoin the good, and we refuse the evil. We discourage probably the evil, but not in woke. If you like it, it's good. If you don't like it, it's bad. And I won't say anything against it because I'm woke and I don't want to offend you. My whole life is based on not offending other people and their belief systems, no matter how crazy, corrupt, and contaminated their belief systems are. I won't challenge you because I'm woke. You can see it every day, all around you. And so you have to decide. I'm on a jihad about this. No doubt. This is one of the major ideological jihad fronts confronting woke. So I will tell people, but we have to be skillful. There's some things you can't say, to people. But so you have to be skillful about it. But when you get a chance and there's an opening and you can see that the other person may be able to handle it. And sometimes they can't and it doesn't matter. They get upset. I learned that from the psychoanalysts. Don't worry if people get upset, they refuse what you're saying. Doesn't matter. Watch the effect. Sometimes you'll say something, people will get upset, they'll dismiss it, they'll refuse it, but you'll see that it's starting to work. So now you're adding in your own worm, but this is a positive worm. These are the worms that give your soil more fertility because they break down the elements. So this is the good worm that fights against the bad worm of yolk. So let's go back to basics first. Now I've given you my Fareed Zakaria take on woke. I think there's a lot there. Let's go back to, let's work backwards to the original definition. So I found this on, of course, Wikipedia. Wikipedia is very woke, by the way. It's reliable for everything except any subject that might be controversial. If you're involved in a subject that's controversial, like vaccine injury, don't go to Wikipedia. So, but it's good for some issues, and it has a nice definition here if you want to know where this all comes from. So it says woke is a political slang adjective derived from African American vernacular English. Okay. Yeah, you know that the black Americans, they have their own vocabulary sometimes. So, and some of it is very relevant. I still remember being at a rap music event somewhere in a shopping center in San Diego when the rap was really good stuff. It was good political critique. And they have their own, the black culture has its own vocabulary around these things, and sometimes it's useful. It originally meant alertness to racial prejudice and discrimination, okay? So it was designed as being anti-racist. Although there again, the anti-racists have become racists. We're living in a weird world now, okay? So we have racist anti-racism. And one of the top manifestations is something called critical race theory. Everything's about race. A black policeman shoots a black man in a confrontation and kills him, and this is because of white supremacy. Believe it or not. Because the black man was brainwashed by the white supremacists to kill black people. This is how it gets really crazy. All this stuff on critical race theory, and it's taught in universities, maybe even in high schools. We didn't have it in our time. So everything for them is about race. Okay, so beware of that bias. The fact is, if you look around, and there's a lot of black people, alhamdulillah, saying this, I've seen, until there's very little racism now. You see them, black people everywhere. They make a point of making commercials now with mixed couples. You have black people on every major station. Of course, they're predominant in a number of the sports. They're there in entertainment. They're everywhere. This idea that they're still suffering. It's the same, I must say, the ladies are going to get upset with me, but it's the same about some of the radical feminists. Women can do whatever they want in this society. They can be policemen. They can be firemen. In fact, there's an advantage, I believe, in being a woman now. In many sectors. At the Université de Montréal, where I did 1 year of study, now in medicine, 60% of the first year students are women now. So don't tell me there's all these obstacles, the glass ceiling or the whatever ceiling. A lot of this is garbage. We come a long way. I'm not saying it wasn't true at some point. We come a long way in terms of equality of the sexes, equality of the races, and sometimes we go overboard. So, beginning in the 2010s, it began to be expanded. Okay, so from being awake to racial inequalities, then it became for things like sexism and LGBTQ and and all kinds of issues of social justice. So being woke meant being left-wing, progressive, anti-racist, anti-whatever, anti-gender bias, etc., etc. And it worked its way, like the worm that we were talking about, into all sectors of moral values. See if you can identify it wherever you go. Now, another thing we should be aware of is that almost all the problem, why do I say it's so important? because almost all the problems that we're dealing with in our contemporary society can be traced back to woke. I'll show you what I mean. Let's take some of the major problems that have occurred in recent times. COVID. You can trace COVID right back to woke in science. Okay. So the scientists were developing gain-of-function research, and it was still woke to say it's okay. Fauci himself said, later he denied it, that he was doing gain-of-function. So gain-of-function is okay, it's worth doing. That's woke. Even more woke is the double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized trial as the only way to know what reality was in science. And that became an excuse for not allowing ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and other very useful treatments. They were all disallowed. But the woke people had become co-opted by the pharmaceutical companies and the health institutes in the United States. And saying that China, in fact, we had this when people said, oh, it was released by a lab in China that wasn't very oh, this is racism. Back to woke. So the fact they wouldn't acknowledge it, still not acknowledging that it's obvious that it comes from a lab, and the lab was in China, although it was developed in the United States. If you said it was released from China, oh, you're a racist. Now you're an anti-Chinese racist. Woke. The Russia-Ukraine war is another woke. This is political woke. The political woke is that NATO is this holy institution that's only interested in freedom and democracy, that does everything right, just like the European Economic Union Parliament. They do everything right. Yeah, that's woke. Okay, and the people who really reflect on it, thinking of Stephen Cohn and John Mearsheimer, they saw that NATO was provoking this war and is still supporting the war. They're not really pushing for a proper negotiated settlement. This hugely destructive, horrible, catastrophic war. And behind it all, if you trace it carefully, you'll see the woke principles. NATO good, Russia bad. Okay. They do have some good and evil, but it's all upside down. Often. Inflation comes from woke economics. People are suffering, let's spend more money. Give them more money. Reduce the suffering and more money. And now we have inflation and everyone's suffering. Also, petroleum. Oh, there's another woke cause. Anthropogenic climate change. Ever heard about that one? It's one of the biggest illusions of modern time. If you check it back, the real thinkers, the geniuses, not the consensus people, they see that this is a false hypothesis. But it's the politically correct woke hypothesis. So it's driving up the price of petroleum. It's driving up the price of energy and leading to inflation. Inflation, woke. The Middle East conflict, another area of wokeism, because one of the specialties of wokeism is to set up paradigms, that's why people relate it back to Marxism, of oppressor and oppressed. So in the Marxist paradigm, it's the bourgeoisie who's the oppressor and the proletariat who's oppressed. In the Middle East, the woke philosophy, it's the Palestinians that are only oppressed and the Israelis who are only oppressors. That's the woke principle. No one wants to recognize the responsibility of the Palestinians in this situation. The Israelis also have responsibility, but that's not woke to just see both sides. Woke is the oppressed are Palestinians, the oppressors are Israelis, and that's the end of the story. Now, if you have a narrative like that, you'll never get a solution. Because in order to solve problems, you need to see reality. If you get the wrong diagnosis in medicine, you won't be able, except by some extreme lucky chance, If you get the wrong diagnosis, you won't find the right medicine. Okay? So behind every struggle, every tragedy in the world now, there's some woke ideology going on. And probably in your life as well. Because woke obviously extends into our personal life. So if you have the chutzpah, I think in English the word is gall. If you have the courage to say that women are more emotional in their reaction, oh, cut off. This guy is a chauvinist, he's a misogynist, he's anti-women. You can't say it, although it's obvious. And some women will acknowledge it. It has to be managed. The realities have to be managed, not denied. That's the subject of my next article on the blog, is denial. If you deny reality, you won't be able to solve the problems. So, all of this reflection started actually from a documentary that was called Woke Revealed. I don't know, you can look for it. It may be findable somewhere. Probably not on YouTube, but maybe somewhere else. Woke Revealed. I don't even know who was producing it. I know that Joshua Phillips was one of the people speaking. There were but there's a lot of interesting insight there. And I'll try to share with you a few of these insights. So, one of the people on this documentary was someone called Laura Di Benedito. I never heard of her. But her definition of woke people are well-meaning people who are overcompensating. They wanted, wokers are do-gooders. They're namby-pambies. The old conservative statement was bleeding heart, weak-kneed liberals. Okay, I don't want to get it. It's not really a left-right issue. It's everywhere in our interaction. It is a truth-falsehood issue, not a right-wing issue. Joshua Phillips, in this documentary, thinks this whole woke philosophy comes from naturism, which he defines as the belief that people are essentially good. Now, if you've lived, I don't know what the cutoff point is, but let's say you start getting reasonable at 7, 8. If you haven't realized by 13 that people are not intrinsically good, you're dans les patates, as they say in French. You're not paying attention. And if you're 30, 40, 50, and you still people are intrinsically good, you're not seeing reality. You're going to have a lot of trouble. The Quran reminds us over and over and over again, even though the scholars say husn adan, you have to have good opinion of people, the Quran says the opposite. It says people are disputatious, people are corrupt, people are hypocritical, people are kufr, are resisting. It has all the faults of man in there. If the scholars insist we have to have a good opinion of man, I think that's a dangerous place to start. Let's say we should be open-minded. But having a good opinion of a bad person is foolishness and counterproductive. And there are plenty of them around. Some other statements from this documentary. What is woke? Weaponizing empathy and shame in order to secretly push a power agenda. That's a good one. Okay. So they make the people feel that this is the way to be empathic. And it's shameful if you're not empathic for these poor, whatever, transgender people, let's say. In order to get control of them, you shame them and you tell them you're not being empathic enough. The way to get, okay, this is someone called J.P. Sears, I don't know who he is, defining woke. The way to get good people to convert to bad ideologies because they want to be seen as kind and caring. Okay? This is like the essence of it. The way to get good people, the people's intention is good, but they're taught bad ideologies. In Joshua Phillips' terms, that would be Marxism, and a lot of the anti-woke people are also anti-Marxist, which I understand. But you convert these good people, and I remember the good people in the Marxist movement, you convert them into bad ideologies because they want to be seen as caring and kind. Know any people like that? Religion teaches us, on the other hand, to affirm truth and to deny falsehood, to seek for good and to refuse and struggle against evil. It's a different principle, completely opposite to the woke principle. So each and every one of you should look at your lives, because essentially woke is hypocrisy, and see how much hypocrisy there is in your life, where you're not calling out people for doing wrong things. You should be free to do that. If you're not, get away from those people. Now, we'll finish with a little commentary here on Christianity, because generally I find that Muslims are pretty good at rejecting woke. You won't find a whole bunch of support for LGBTQ and transgender and all kinds of and Marxist ideology. You won't find much in the Muslim world. They reject this woke because they know that ultimately it's about truth and falsehood, good and evil. That's the game. The game isn't about being nicey to other people and playing to their biases and prejudices. Okay. The only area they get a little bit on a slippery slope is when you get to the Middle East, and it all gets kind of confusing and obscured, and then we're only victims. Victimization, oppression, oppressor is part of the woke mentality. So beware of it. The Quran teaches us not to be victims, but to be accountable. We're accountable for our actions as individuals and as peoples, and those actions have consequences. So woke has made its way into Christianity, you can see, to the extent that someone finally, a priest, a pastor finally came out with a book that I was due to order called Woke Jesus. And this book, he's finally starting to look at how this woke mentality, some of these leftist, secularist, agnostic ideas have worked their way into the church. So now you can have all kinds of people from whatever gender bias you want, as pastors, as priests, teaching people. The Christians they've lost their way, many of them. Now there's a return. You know, some of the evangelicals, some of the more conservative Catholics, some of the Orthodox people, there's a return to essential values, but the church has been largely undermined by this woke mentality, to its own detriment. We do our dhikr in a church. The church is almost totally depopulated on Sunday Mass, where the mosques are full on Friday prayer. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. This is to some extent because the Muslims have rejected woke and gone back to their traditional teachings of what is right and what is wrong, of what is true and what is false. And really this is very salutary for the Muslim nation. They just have to be careful a bit, because they get their politics wrong sometimes. They go woke in politics, but at least in personal interaction and in relationship with Allah, with God, they've rejected woke. May they be a model for all the religions to reject this modernist deviation of truth and falsehood. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun wa salim wa alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Okay, I'll be shortly writing, I believe, an article on denial, which actually overlaps some of this, because woke is about denial of the basic principle of good and evil, amongst other things. Okay, look forward to seeing you again soon, and have a good week.